Hello. So, in this lecture, I wanted to talk about reporting. I know, this is nobody's favorite subject, but the thing is, if you really want to work professionally, then you're not just selling security bugs, you're selling security bugs dressed up in nice reports. So, because of that, I wanted to give you a few tips. First of all, the report is the only outcome of your assessment. So this is the only thing what makes your customer come back with a new project. So basically, if your report is bad, then your work was bad. That's it. With that said, let's see a few things which you might want to put in your report. So first, data about the customer and you. Like contact data, responsibilities, who is the document owner, etc. Then an executive summary. This is basically summarizing the results of the project for people who are not going to read the whole report. There will be quite a few of them. This should give a general idea of the overall security and mention the most critical problems and their impact. Then the third is the scope of the assessment. The scope had to be laid down at the very beginning of the planning phase. So here you just write down what you decided then. So what you were going to test and what you were not going to test. That's very important because that's how a user knows what was out of scope and what was in the scope of this project. Then you will probably have disclaimer. So probably you want to cover yourself legally in your report. So security is always a really sensitive topic. So you have to make sure that you are always cover yourself. And the disclaimer is exactly for that. Here you can tell anything what you want to the customer, which will protect you. Then there could be various other chapters like methodology, means how you were going to do the test or what's your testing process, etc. About cleanup, etc. And the sixth is the most important, the findings. So in this chapter, you describe all the findings which you found during your assessment. So let's talk about the findings. There are a few stuff that every finding should have. For instance, obviously a name. This is just to differentiate between the various findings. Then a risk. This can be critical, high, medium, low, and maybe information. The risk is basically a combination of the exploitability of the finding and the severity of the finding. The next one is a summary. As I said, there will be many people who are not going to read the whole report. They're just going to read the executive summary and maybe the summaries of each findings. The summary should summarize this finding in a few sentences, and it should tell what is the root cause of the problem and what's the impact of the vulnerability. And then come the finding description. This is basically where you give every information about the vulnerability, what you can. So this should tell why the problem happens, what is really the vulnerability, a proof of concept attack with screenshots, a clear guide how to reproduce the problem so that the developers can test it themselves, and basically anything what you find important to describe this exact vulnerability. Then you can have an exploitability, which basically explains in a few sentences how difficult it is to exploit this vulnerability and what the attacker would need regarding to skill set or technology or access rights or whatever to exploit the problem. And the last one is severity. This basically explains the impact of the problem. So what can an attacker do when he exploits this problem? Can he just read data, or can he also write data or change the application? Whatever. So here, this is the scenario what an attacker would do when he exploits this problem. So some companies have different fields or even more, but I think these are the most important. Also, your readers might be technically skilled people, but probably not security-wise skilled. So you might not have to explain what an HTTP request is, but when it comes to security stuff, then you have to clarify everything and you have to be really clear in your descriptions. All right, I think you might have already fallen asleep, so I will just finish up here and I will see you in the next lecture. Bye.